Welcome back, F11 members, to part 2 of the fundamentals of post-production video tutorials for issue 61, February 2017. So on the screen in front of me, I have a shoot overlooking the Jurassic Coast, looking down here to Kimmeridge Bay, Clavell Tower there, and beyond Moop Bay and Weymouth Bay beyond that. An absolutely beautiful session that I was very pleased to finally conquer. It's a location that I've worked many times but never yet managed to make the picture that I wanted to until just a week or so back, when I was rewarded with this beautiful late afternoon winter light on the Jurassic Coast. Great session. Quite cold and windy up there, which is why I had to essentially dispense with the tripod and shoot with an ISO of 800 ISO up there because of the wind buffeting that I was getting. That enabled me to use a shutter speed of 1/160th of a second, which combined with the image stabilization enabled me to produce a sharp image. Of course, shooting with a camera like the Canon 5D Mark IV, shooting at an ISO of 800 is absolutely nothing. There's absolutely no noise visible in the image. So if you need to go to those kind of ISOs, they just have to be done if it's the difference between making a picture and not. So let's work through the post-production of this image. And this is the finished article you see in front of you. And this is the before and after. The image straight out of the camera there on the left looks pretty gutless, hazy, and really not very impressive at all. And here we see what the results of my labours in the digital darkroom. Okay, so let's work through it. So I come down to here to reset, and we're going to start from scratch. So you know what's coming first. It always happens to be that way. I'm going to look at my black and my white points. So here we go again. Hold down the Alt key, move the black slider to the left. You can see my histogram here. The exposure has been pegged so that I'm maximizing the detail without clipping any highlights. The sky looks burnt out, but there is detail there. So if I move my black slider to the right here, I will make sure that the darkest tone in the image is a pure black. And as I always do, same with the whites here. So move the whites to the right as far as I can before clipping starts to be a problem. And I can go all the way to plus 45 or so. You can see up here, just clipping a few little highlights there. I'm not worried about that at the moment. Just the odd few in the brightest part of the image is not the end of the world. Now, what do I look at next? Well, actually, I've got quite a dark sort of foreground here to me. So I'm going to actually boost the shadows. But before that, I do that. Let's actually look at using the Dehazer slider, because I'm shooting with a long lens with polarizing filter is helping somewhat to slice through the atmosphere. And I'm just going to dial in a bit of Dehazer to see what I can do about those distant cliffs there. And you can see it's really quite an effective tool. If I go too far, as you can see in my foreground there, I start to clip down here where it's showing those blue bits. I start to clip shadows. Dehazer is obviously altering contrast. So I'm going to go to plus 40-ish there, and that's gone some way to taking out that distant haze. I don't want to take it all out because that would just look unrealistic. The haze is part of the shoot. Nevertheless, I think that's helped quite a bit. But now, of course, I've got a very dark foreground here, much too dark. I want to see detail down here in the hedges and in the fields there, picking up the last of the winter light. So I'm going to use my shadows slider here and move this to the right. How far to go with shadows? Well, quite a way actually. This is really, what the 5D Mark IV is different to its predecessors is the detail in those shadows there. And I've boosted that to about +80 to bring up that shadow detail there. But that area of the image is still, just for me, a bit too dark. So I'm going to use the Grad tool here. And I'm going to slide it in from the bottom. And in part 1 of the this month's tutorials, I said about using the Shift key to ensure that the Grad tool comes in at an even angle. In this particular case, I don't think that's not such of an issue. I want the Grad tool to be on a bit of an angle, and I just want to brighten up this bottom of the image here. So using this, take that highlight off, recovery off, and on this Grad I'm just going to brighten it just a touch here. So how much? Well, let's come into about +25 or so. Just going to add a bit of a softer grab there so the transition is not visible, and just add in a touch of contrast as well, a little bit there. A bit more on my exposure, that's too much. I think somewhere around about 30 is going to be about what I want. A bit more contrast. Okay, and that's helped quite a bit with that foreground there. Again, I want it to be subtle. I do not want this to be obvious, so the less we do the better, really. Okay, click on Done, so that's okay for that. Now I just want to again use the Grad tool, but just to darken down the sort of middle part of the image here. I'm going to come back to the sky in a minute. I'm looking at this area of the image from about here up. So let's use another Grad here. And again, I'm not too concerned about it being level. Go for a medium type Grad here. And with this Grad, I want to add bit of brightening again. Sorry, the opposite. I want to darken a little bit here. So I'm going to come down on my exposure. Actually, that Grad, I'm just going to go for a much softer transition there. Okay, come down to around about -37 looks good. Maybe go a bit softer there. A bit more. Put a touch of contrast in. Getting there, getting there. Move that up there. Okay, that's not bad. I think I want more contrast on there. Again, if I go too far, it really will look obvious. So subtlety is the key. Click on Done there. I can always come back and readjust these Grads, by the way. And now I'm going to look at the sky, and I'm going to adjust just now. I'm going to use the Shift key, hold that down, and make sure I get an absolutely level Grad here. And in this particular instance, I just want to work on the sky, and I want to bring back those highlights in the sky. So round about -60 there on my sky there, and a touch of contrast again. How much? About +30. Click on Done, step back and look at the image. I want to sharpen it now. Click on Sharpen Scenic in the preset. Adjust my masking, as always. Hold down the Alt key, masking to the right. Just so it affects the sky, really, the sky and the sea. I'm going to add a touch of vibrance now to the image. Not much, maybe +15. Where am I with this picture now? It's looking radically different from where we started. but I think that I'm just going to go back and address that middle part of the image. So if I go to my Grad tool here and I click on that little dot there, which is the middle grad there, I'm now going to actually tweak my whites here, just in the area that the black is affecting. If I click on there, just to improve the contrast in this image here. And I can do the same with blacks. Now you can see very easy to go way too far. So the merest hint of -3 on those blacks there helps. I could of course add some dehaze in here as well, just on the Grad tool, and I'm just going to put the merest touch in there, +5. Come back on my exposure. I think it's a bit too heavy, that. So, sorry, going the wrong way. I think around about -17 looks good to me. Done there. And there we have what I think is an image that I really like. Partly because of the location. It's a place I know so well. I've walked along here so many times, and yet this is the first time I've managed to photograph it successfully. So there you go, tweaking selective areas of the image using the Grad tool, using the Dehazer judiciously, really striving to keep subtlety and avoid the look of an overworked image. But that's the end result. Okay, if I now go back to where we started, and there is the before and after. So, do send us your suggestions for what you'd like to see more of in future issues of these video tutorials. We always welcome hearing from you F11 members. See you next month.